Just a quick update regarding this new medical bogeyman that's seemingly resurging. Now, of course, this is going up to YouTube, so I'm going to use fairly coded language, but hopefully you understand what I'm talking about. So obviously, within this new resurgent medical bogeyman, we have the 15, right? Seen there within the sort of hyphenated name of this this new thing. So 15 is very important within Masonry as a number. Also as well, in terms of the US as an acronym, as opposed to say the USA, the US within Hebrew can also be condensed down into the acronym Aleph and He. Now again, that comes to 51, again the reverse being 15. Moreover, XBB, X is the Tau or the Tav in the Phoenician alphabet, and B is the Bet in the same set of Semitic letters. Now, the Tav, Tau letter, is actually quite important. It links with this idea of the green man and that type of symbology, and that symbology that relates to that recurrent deific character. I won't get into that within this video, but just to bear that in mind. So thus, this Tav Bet equals 26 in ordinal Hebrew, with each individual number from each cipher also adding to 8 throughout the rest of them. 8 is very important, the analemma of course. However, it also links with this idea of the kingdom on earth as it is in heaven, right? And believe me, that is taken literally. Thus, that is to be physically manifested, not just within oneself, but within the actual world as a whole. So therefore, the analemma in that sense is a continuation or an extension of the oroboros symbol, which really is this sort of relentless cycle of, again, resets, where the snake, the serpent, that symbol of the world, devours itself constantly, right? The creation devours itself constantly, attempting to, or chaos, in other words, devours itself constantly in an attempt to recreate that which was extant within either an antediluvian or pre-catastrophe society or civilization. Again, we see that within the 1627 work titled The New Atlantis, written by Francis Bacon but posthumously published by another. Again, that was the reason for America. It was to be the nucleus, the springboard, or, if you will, the strong arm for this new Atlantis. Now again, I get into this within my book, but it all goes back to this Lord character, and the evidence and connections are quite compelling, at the very least. However, it is symbolic of their relentlessness in pursuing this policy of merging the profane and divine by any and all costs. That symbol really is an extension of the oroboros, or again, the devouring tail, or the snake devouring its own tail. Literally, oroboros means to devour one's tail. Now, in Kabbalah, they seek to supplant God via this unification, this perverse synthesis of the dualisms of life, right? The profane and divine, merging them together. The analemma itself is really the Orphic egg. It's the same sort of symbology, merging the profane and divine into one endless, chaotic cycle. And these individuals, what they worship is chaos. That their quote-unquote Lord, their dark Lord, is chaos. That is, in essence, what they worship. The serpent is a symbol of the creation, of not the form of creation, but of the formless motion of it. the process of creation rather than the creation itself, if that makes sense. So they worship the power. They don't worship the end product. They don't worship the beauty of creation. But they worship the power to render creation into form. And that is what they seek to harness. Digressing. Moreover, if we take that 15 as well from the Tav Bet Bet or the XBB and add it to 26, we get the value of 41. Now, 41 and the reverse being 14 is a rather interesting divisor that I have spoke of previously. The most fascinating connection with this value is that 14 is the number of levels on the pyramid of the Great Seal. That also links to Jacob's ladder, as per the ladder of Jacob, which is a pseudepigraphic text. It was quite important within the Kabbalah. Not so much the orthodoxy, but within the Kabbalah it was quite important, and within Merkaba mysticism. Obviously as well we have the 14 rays of the Aten symbol, the ideological origin point of this entire conspiracy as we see it now. Of course as well, and within the Hebrew standard gematria cipher, we see 404 plus 1 plus 5, which equals 410. Again, the same thing, 41. That same recurrent value. So very, very interesting. Very interesting indeed. Obviously as well, the Tav Bet Bet. Tav being the 22nd letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Bet being the second. Thus, Tav Bet Bet is 2222. Again, this is the quadruple and the triple two value, or even symbolism in and of itself that we're seeing again, over and over again. We saw it within 2/22/2022 at 2:22 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which was the date when Biden announced Ukraine's impending invasion by Russia. In fact, Biden took the stage at exactly 2:22 p.m. and he mentioned the word Ukraine exactly as soon as the time changed from 2:22 to 2:23, again 322 reversed, he mentioned the word Ukraine. Very interesting indeed. Of course as well, 22 times 2 times 2 equals 88. Oh, I wish to add as well the analemma, or again the double oroboros. Again, it links with that same orphic principle of as above, so below. What is done in heaven must be rendered here on earth. And we don't mean within oneself as a sort of spiritual journey. No. What they mean is a physical unification, a forceful unification of all the disparate dualisms, yet mutually complementary dualisms of the world, of the universe, merging them all into one, into what they would state within the modern era, the internet of all things, right? This is also termed the rebus or rebus. And again, this goes back to this principle of, again, the connection between Hermes and, or the union between, the copulation between Hermes and Aphrodite, or the red king and the white queen. Again, that goes back to the Kemetic, or Hyksos, monarchical crowns. One was white and one was red. Merge them together and you get the pharaonic crown, the king of the two lands, if you will. Again, the Alpha and Omega, like Ra Horakti, right, which literally means Ra, of the two horizons, right, of the two lands. Kut in Aton, again, another term for Amarna, or the capital of, the Atenist capital of Akhenaten. Kut in Aton means the horizon of the Aten. Funnily enough, Neom seems to link with that. If you look for it, this idea of the horizon within the Egyptian world, the ancient Egyptian world, the horizon was always seen as, say, the future. You would look to the horizon, the future, if you will. With neom, it's a composite word, again, new or nova, meaning in Latin new, and mukbal, right, or mukbala in Arabic, which means future. So literally the new future, or again, the city of the new horizon. As Aten and Adonai was the city of the horizon, we now have Neom, which is the city of the new horizon, right? These are totally connected. As well, Neom, if you look on the map, firstly, it goes right through, or, well, it depends on one's interpretation of the Old Testament. There's some that claim the area where Neom is being built, that is the area where Mount Sinai was truly. Obviously, Neom, the line, if you were to extend the line out, hypothetically speaking, it goes through the Sinai Peninsula, keep going into Egypt, and it directly, almost directly, lines up with what's called now Tel Amarna, or which was in Akhenaten's day, Aten, his capital, and it almost precisely sort of points. Again, if you take that line and extrapolate out the line of Neom, the line city, extrapolate that out, it basically goes right to the great Atenis temple in Amarna. Now, again, that can't be a coincidence, of course. We know Atenism, and Akhenaten himself, who was probably Moses, I get into that within my book. He was extremely important within the mystery religion and this conspiracy at large that we see now. Extremely important. In fact, within The Secret Destiny of America by Manly P. Hall, page 7, he puts a grand list together of what, Akhenaten was the first Democrat, the first internationalist, the first of their order of the quest, the first this, the first that. He was, a great man, a man well ahead of his time. He was, a merciful king and blah, blah, blah. He was none of those things. None of those things. He, in essence, as they're doing with Neom now, within the sands of the desert, did he drag slaves out to work them to death, just like what they're doing in Saudi Arabia right now. Work them to death to build this utopian dream, this fantasy. Again, the foundations were built upon the skulls of forced labourers, slaves. And the blood, sweat and toil was all done by people who were forced. They weren't doing it voluntarily. It was all slavery. That's exactly the type of system that they're wanting to bring in as well, remember. What they desire is slavery. So of course as well, you have the rebus, you have Akhenaten, he was seen as a hermaphrodite, or depicted rather, as a hermaphrodite, right? He had breasts, right? He was meant to be a pharaoh, a male pharaoh. He had breasts and an hourglass shape to him. Furthermore as well, we see that Yahweh himself, or itself, if you break down the word Yahweh, now there's deep meaning within that tetragrammaton, deep meaning, and this is just merely one facet of its meaning, but if you break it down into its two constituent parts, you have Yah, or merely just the Yod character, which means typically one or God, or it's a male derived term, right? And the term Hova or Hava is where we actually get our term for Eve from, right? It literally means existence, or the motherly principle of life, right? Or it also can mean to be. Again, it's a feminine word. Now, again, what this is showing is Yahweh is the rebus. He is the hermaphroditic God. He is both male and female, right? He is everything, in essence. Of course, that's entirely in keeping with what's actually stated within the Old Testament. But nonetheless, that's also what is stated within all of the mystery religions, all of their various branches, right? All of the various sects. For example, the Hermetic work discusses the bisexuality of God, not meaning in terms of his sexual preference, simply meaning that he is both genders, right? Now again, what they seek to do, remember, is create a malhuto, right? A physical monarchy or a physical kingdom that mirrors that which is above. Again, as above, so below. It's the same thing we see within that oroboros, the analemma, right? The double oroboros. That which is in heaven must also be manifested on earth, right? Which again, by the way, according to the Old Testament, is entirely, that is idolatry. You can't make any likeness of that which is in heaven or in the deep, right? In the tehom. Now, again, it's very strange that we see that stated as prescription against idolatry, against, as they did in the Tower of Babel, becoming like God, supplanting God by, demeaning his position within the natural order, by, in essence, making that which is immaterial, material, right? Idolatry. We see that proscription within the Old Testament, yet, within the Shema prayer, even within the Lord's Prayer itself, within the Christian tradition, I can imagine it's probably similar within the Islamic tradition as well, and also the Baha'i faith and all of the various offshoots of the Abrahamic religion. They seek to create on earth. Well, for example, within the Shema, we see the line, Baruch Shem Kevod, Malchuto Leolam Vaed, right? Blessed be his name, his kingdom forever and ever, right? Now, again, the term Malchuto, as per the Sephirah Malkuth on the Sephirot, it is at the bottom, right? It is the physical kingdom, literally. So again, the terms that they use within the Old Testament sort of belie what they're seeking to do. And again, it runs contrary what we see proscribed as to, in terms of what not to do within Genesis, right? You cannot create a likeness of that which is in heaven upon the earth, which is true. To manifest the immaterial is to demean it, is to supplant it. Again, it's a bit like the Tower of Babel. He created a tower that reached to the heavens, right? It's a similar thing with Jacob's ladder, right? A stairway to heaven. If you read the ladder of Jacob, the pseudepigraphical text, it really describes Jacob's ladder in the vision in a far more complex and detailed manner. And again, it really is shown, much like the Tower of Babel, a sort of fusion between the profane and the divine, again like the Orphic egg, like the analemma. Everything that they are showing you is the theurgy that they're following, the magical ritualism. It's the eschatology that they are working towards, right? And it's not prophecy. This is a plan, right? Of course you can write prophecy down, and when it comes to pass, of course if you've planned it like that and it's an agenda and you've been working towards it, when it comes to pass, for the vast majority who are not within the inner clique of the conspiracy for this agenda, which has been sort of masqueraded as a prophecy, the outer society, the public, have no idea. They believe that this is all just prophecy. They believe it's a sort of act of the divine. They believe it a sign from providence. a fulfillment of prophecy or what have you. It's easy to fulfill prophecy when you're obviously writing it and creating the plan and putting into effect the plan to, again, fulfill this eschatology. Digressing, the Internet of Things. That shall become the new God. Again, what really that is a usurpation of God and the natural order of things, with God obviously at the top. Thus, in essence, what they seek is to bring their Lord, which really is an egregoric sort of manifestation of their own strange long-term conceptualizing of their quote-quote promise. And furthermore as well, it is to literally bring the creation up to the level of the creator. And the way they're doing this is via solviate coagula, or order ab chao. Again, to break down, to putrefy. Again, if we're speaking about the great work and the major stages of that, it begins with putrefaction, right, or putrefaction, where the body entirely is decomposed, is deconstructed, destroyed, rendered into ash. We're going to get into that symbolism regarding ash. It links in with this. Render it to ash, to burn entirely the body as a whole. Only then can it be remade into something new. So therefore they have to destroy the entire creation. Totally destroy the foundations of natural order, to thus invert natural order, or so they think. Thus doing, they physically manifest the power of God, which is God. They, by this act, invert the natural order of things, where the creation becomes equal or supplants the creator. The painting, if you will, jumps forth from the canvas and traps the painter into the canvas where it was once entombed. I mean, that's what we're sort of talking about here. And these individuals are serious about this. You may think it's superstition. Believe you me, this madness that we're seeing at present here, and continuing to this day, it's all seeking your app. You have to basically die, right? So that's what this is all about. There's 3 classes. There are the perfects, right? The people who are perfect, just unto themselves, a sort of perfect being. And they do not require, they're in the world, but they're not of it, really. That's how they see it. Of course, I wouldn't agree with that, but that's how they see it. These perfect beings are at the peak of the hierarchy. They don't require the purgatory of death, or the purification of death, of the grave, to cleanse them. They are already cleansed by a virtue of their own existence. Then we get to the Klipot Noga. That's the redeemable Klipot, right? Literally the shells of light. These redeemable Klipot are to, in essence, be murdered. Again, the purification of the grave. And again, the Kabbalists believe wholeheartedly in reincarnation, which is called the Gilgul. You may want to look up that Kabbalistic term. But yes, it's this idea of, in essence, like Buddhism, you go round the wheel, constant cycle of death and rebirth, to cleanse yourself of the taint, of the impurity, of the uncleanness of the previous, the primordial world that has not been rectified, has not been tikkuned in the vision of the Lord of this earth, and his acolytes, his disciples, if you will, his disciples of chaos, his children of the void. After the 6th millennia, And believe you me, if you follow Analusis, we are actually already in that calendar system. It's linked with Masonry and Rosicrucianism, but it really is just a simplified version of the Hebraic Anno Mundi. However, if you follow that, then we are already in the 7th millennia. Now, again, for them to destroy creation, they have to follow creation. Again, they're imitators. They seek to imitate God, the true creator. So, thus, in the 7th millennia, again, 6000, they go by Anno Mundi or Anno Lucis. Now, Anno Lucis, the year 2000 AD, we had already entered that 7th millennia, that totalizing or finalizing of the new creation, of the new world, of the entire conspiracy that has been leading up to this point, right? It is all meant to come in to view at that point. It's all meant to be realized at that point. The Anno Mundi calendar, we won't be in the year, in the 7th millennia, or the year 6000, until approximately 2240 AD or so, or roughly about that time period. So, thus, there's a sort of schism between the Western Kabbalists, or the Western esotericists, and the Near East, or original Kabbalists. Now, this is sort of fueling what we're seeing right now. Again, the Western esotericists are merely a front for these individuals, right? A front for the true power. However, to keep them on board with this sort of doomsday death cult, they have to play along. And of course, they're doing that at present. Everything they're doing in regards to the agenda, the World Economic Forum, the Agenda 2030, Agenda 21, obviously speeding up to Agenda 2025. The reason for that is because of this schism. Some of them believe that they're already in the 7th millennia, again, like creation, the 7th day, the day of finalizing the creation. It's in a way it's similar to the Horseman of Death. That he is a finalizing, a totalizing of the previous 3 horsemen. Again, the 7th day is akin to that. It's a finalizing or a totalizing of the 6 previous days in creation. So yes, that's the reason for them speeding up everything that we see. Again, they've got to keep the pawns on side. These pawns, again, they're sort of married into these lines anyway, but they believe they're going to be godmen. They are going to be the new gods. This is a new species that is emerging and will emerge once we do away with the pesky Homo sapiens. Now again, this has been done before. I go into that within my book. Firstly, again, looking at Atlantis. This Lord of the Earth character appears there. We look into Plato's Timaeus and Critias. We see that at the centre of Atlantis was a temple to Poseidon, right? Now, contrary to popular belief, originally Poseidon was a lord of the earth, right? That's literally what Poseidon means. It's a composite word, literally meaning lord of the earth. It uses the Attic term da or don rather than ga, or as in Gaia. Peculiarly, we see that term, that don, is very close to Adon, right? My lord, or Adonai, my lords. Now, furthermore as well, that Adoni, or Adonai, or Adon, was also a name, or a term, used by the Phoenicians or Canaanites for the god Tammuz, which links with the Sumerian Dumuzid, right? It's also another term used for the Greek name Adonis, or the Phrygian and Roman Attis. Now, all of these deities, Tammuz, Dumuzid, Adonis, Attis, even Mithras, in terms of his eschatology, were said to have descended into death, and then were resurrected. We find that the ancient day of Easter, or the early Christian Catholic day of Easter, is actually held on the same day of the Attis resurrection, right? Of the resurrection of Attis. The day prior to that, there was a sort of mourning. People would whip themselves. Again, self-flagellation is something that was carried on into the Catholic tradition as well. They would ensure that the blood would splatter on to Attis's idol. Moreover, some of the Gala priests. Now again, I get into my book the significance of the term Gala. Again, we see it within the Galilee, right? But they would also engage in castration. Now, Christ in the New Testament actually advocated, or tacitly advocated, for castration as well. Again, another deity that died and then was resurrected, as it states within Matthew 19:12. Now, as we see with Tammuz and Dumuzi, both had the epithets of shepherd and fisherman, right? As it states within Matthew 4:19, Jesus said, "Come follow me, and I will send you out to fish for the people, or I will make you fishers of men." Very interesting, of course, one of the old, extremely old, one could say even the original sign or sigil of Christianity was the fish, right? Very, very interesting indeed. Of course, the idea of the shepherd is something we see throughout the Abrahamic, again, the Old Testament and New Testament, the entire scripture of the Abrahamic religions. So again, very interesting that we're seeing overlaps and parallels between all of these different religions and their theology as well. Touching upon the female counterpart to Attis, we see her name in the Latin was Magna Mater, or the Great Mother. Again, that's something that continued down through the Catholic tradition as Mother Mary, right? Now again, it could be the consort, or it could be the mother of the deity. The deity in question, this sort of dying and resurrecting God, be it Christ, Attis, Adonis, Tammuz, Dumuzi, what have you. Anyway, it is said that in one of the charges of heresy lodged against the Templars by, ironically, the Catholic Church, was that they venerated, or revered, rather, Mother Mary far more than they did Christ. Very interesting indeed. Of course, Magna Mater, the Phrygian name for her was Sibyl, or that's the Hellenized form. And the Phrygian was Mater Cybele, which literally means Mother of the Mount, or Mother of the Mountain, or Mother of Mount Cybele, right? Which was a mountain in what is now modern-day Turkey. At the time, it was obviously Phrygia. Again, the mountain comes up. Very peculiar. Of course, as well, it states in the Old Testament, throughout many places, about 3 or 4 places in the Old Testament, it states that Yahweh dwells in thick darkness. That's why the Holy of Holies, that area, is in pitch darkness, right? And it's also, funnily enough, in a square. Or pretty much, yes, I think it is a square. It's in a square. So yes, again, the black cube idea. Again, that links with the tephilim that's worn on the forehead and on the arm. On the topic of Phrygia as well, we see that Yahweh and the cult of Yahweh, funnily enough, seems to, and the precursor as Christianity was designed to be, well, 100 years prior to the onset of Christianity, again at the turn of the early centuries AD, we see in 139 BC that it's stated by Valerius Maximus within his Epitome of 9 Books of Memorable Deeds and Sayings, chapter 3. It states, quote, Gnaeus Cornelius Hispalos, Praetor Peregrinus, in the year of the consulate of Marcus Popilius Lenus and Lucius Calpurnius, ordered the astrologers by an edict to leave Rome and Italy within 10 days, since by a fallacious interpretation of the stars they perturbed fickle and silly minds, thereby making profit out of their lies. The same praetor compelled the Abrahamists, I'm just going to use that term instead, who attempted to infect the Roman custom with the cult of Jupiter Sabazius. Now, that is actually not Jupiter Sabazius, it's an example of interpretatio Romana, where the Romans took a foreign deity and essentially ascribed a deity from their pantheon that they knew, a similar or equivalent deity. So Jupiter Sabazius is actually Yahweh Seviot, right? Which literally means Yahweh, Lord of the armies, right? Again, Seviot or Yahweh Seviot is one of the 72 names of Yahweh. Funnily enough, there's 72 demons in the Goetia, or the Lesser Keys of Solomon. Of course, we are legion, for we are many. That is not by accident. And of course, we see plurals everywhere with Yahweh. Adonai as well, my lords. Right? Again, that just may be a coincidence, but who knows? I bring it up anyway. So, in essence, Jupiter Sabazius equals Jehovah or Jove, Sabaoth, which equals Yahweh or Jehovah Seviot, literally Yahweh, Lord of the armies. So, in other words, this cult of Jupiter Sabazius was a precursor to the Christian religion that would be foisted onto Rome by the same culprits 100 years later. So they were attempting to foist onto the Romans their warlike deity, this Lord of the armies, and they were proselytizing them, vigorously, as it's stated by also Suetonius and Tacitus, if I recall correctly. However, it did not work. Therefore, they created a century later a religion that was far more endearing and, on the face of it, far more peaceful, though ultimately it was far more covert in its insurrectionist ways, rather than the religion of Jupiter Sabazius, that cult, which was far more directly insurrectionist, and the Romans caught wind of it, and the Romans expelled them from Rome in 139 BC. They returned 100 years later, almost pretty much 100 years later to the year, to obviously foist on the next cult or religion of subversion. But they were busy between then, actually. We have the Ipsistarians, of which Ipsistos is a Greek word meaning Most High God, right? This deity sort of formed out of the Cappadocian and Phrygian cult of Zeus Sabazios, right? Again, the same idea of Jupiter Sabazios, to which was derived from the northern Syriac cult of Yahweh Sabazios. So we're getting closer to Yahweh the more we sort of trace this back. Thus, what we are seeing here is actually a methodical and gradual infection of every culture and religion, stemming from geographically its origin point in Canaan. And it's attempting to infect every culture and religion with this one deity of Yahweh. Again, they use paganist terms such as Zeus and Jupiter. All of these paganist terms, they'll use anything really to bring in their deity. So again, they're relentless, absolutely relentless with this deity as well. The spirit of it is literally a relentless spirit, just like the oroboros. It's relentless. It doesn't matter how many times it devours itself. It will just constantly turn to its tail and eat. So again, the Greek sistos literally is a transliteration of the Hebrew Elion, which means highest, right? Again, we see that within Deuteronomy 32, 8 to 9, we see El Elyon, which again seems to be precursor to the later Yahweh, as we see within that passage of Deuteronomy 32, that Yahweh was subordinate to this higher deity, this El Elyon. So again, something probably similar happened to Canaan, to Israel. They were probably controlled. This Lord of the Earth deity probably took hold, this Yahweh character. So they appear in Acts 16 to 17, these ipsistos, quote, "These men are servants of the Most High God," unquote. So again, this was the precursor state they conditioned the Greeks, Romans, and Anatolians into prior to foisting Christianity onto them, and then full-blown Abrahamism, as we see now. I suspect this is where the Phrygian cap symbol probably derives from. Since their success in Phrygia and Cappadocia, they maintained the emblem as a symbol of subversion and their will to overthrow, and their success within it. We see it within the American Revolution, the French Revolution, and all manner of Republican uprisings too. So therefore they kept the Phrygian cap as a sort of emblem, as a mocking symbol, showing that, like what they had successfully done in Phrygia and Cappadocia, foisting onto the populace, of which then it later spread in a sort of religious wave or religious osmosis to Rome, to Greece proper as well. This cult of Zeus Sabazios, or Zeus Sabaoth, and also the Yahweh Sabazios, and later on in 139 BC in Rome, you had the Jupiter Sabazios, which actually failed. However, they managed to catch the Romans with the Christian or Christian cult, and in essence that destroyed them. Of course, as well, Yahweh, as we've stated, goes back, further in terms of its name. It seems to go back to Aten, as the Kemetic pronunciation of Aten seems to have been Yati, which is very close again to Yahoo or Yahweh. So, very peculiar there. Oh, I just want to mention as well that this cult, this Jupiter Sabazius cult, seems to have been pushed by the Radonites, right? So, the Radonites came from Edom, or Idumea, which is another name for it. Now, as I've stated previously, regarding Mount Seir and Mount Paran and Sinai and what have you, this is where Judea began. It's actually where Israel began, really, as a cultural and religious force. Again, as we've seen, Yahweh came out of Mount Seir, Mount Paran, around about that area of the Transjordan and northwestern Arabia. Now, the Radonites, again, we see that name appear throughout, and I'll probably do a video later on down the line. I'm still actually researching them, studying them, but it's very interesting. Of course, you even have the term Ra in that, and furthermore, they seem to derive or have a connection to the Persian town of Re. Funnily enough, the modern word for that, or one of the modern variations of this city of Re, is Tehran, right? Very interesting. We see this Radonite, this Re, again, which means the sun in Kemetic. Again, Aten was also said to have an aspect of Ra Horus within him, right? Again, the sun. Interestingly as well, these Radonites, the word Radonite or Rodonite, right, is another term for them. We see the Herodian dynasty, right? All of the heraldic coats of arms, all of the eagles on them seem to derive, well, firstly, all of the heraldic symbolism, the three mountains, again, as I've stated, Mounts Paran, Sinai, and Mount Seir. Those are the three mountains, hence why they appear within Christian and Abrahamic heraldry. Furthermore, we see the tower, again the Tower of Babel. The Lord of the Earth seeks to create that again, right? So we see that symbol as well within the heraldry. However, what we do see is, and also I just wish to mention, we see the lily. What's the lily? It's the hexagram. It's basically a hidden form of the hexagram. However, what we do see is the Hasmonean eagle, either the double-headed eagle or the single-headed eagle. And it will typically have its wings up, right? Again, it's making, as I'll put on the screen right now, of Cecil Rhodes. Again, the Radonites, Cecil Rhodes, right? This is where his surname probably derived from. His family's surname, that is. So, as you can see, he's making what's called the Hillel symbol, or hieroglyph, pardon. Again, it means jubilation in Kemetic. Hillel means jubilation. That's later developed into the term hallelujah, right? Which again means jubilation. Same thing. Again, it's taken on the aspect of, praise be to Yahweh, hallelujah, right? However, it's still kept that idea of religious jubilation. Again, it looks like the shin as well, as you can see, that W shape. Again, like destruction. We also see that symbol made by Moses cast on or cast as a shadow onto the Battle of Rephidim, right? And as long as he held his arms up in this Hillel symbol, this jubilation symbol, this hallelujah symbol, again, the shin as well, the Israelites were besting their enemies on the battlefield in the Battle of Rephidim. So, again, we see that within the Old Testament. There's a connection there, absolutely. So, furthermore as well, yes, we have the Herodian dynasty, again, the Radonites. You also have as well the Cecil Rhodes, Radonite or Radonite, also links with the Proto-Germanic and also Proto-Indo-European word for red, which is Raldonas, right? Again, they stem from Edom, which is the Hebrew or Semitic term for red. Again, we have the red shields, the Rothschilds, the Red Cross. They're talking about colonizing the red planet, right? You see red quite a lot. The red, white and blue, the red crown of the Hyksos of Lower Egypt. Hermes was the red king, who also was linked with Thoth, and Thoth is merely a Kemetic transliteration of David or Dawid. Again, if you write it in Semitic again and Kemetic and Semitic don't have any vowels, so they only have consonants. So Thoth would have been written TWT, right? And again, as we were stating with Adonai and Aten, T's become D's. So TWT, right, or what would be literally in Kemetic tut. W is in the phonetic is typically pronounced in Kemetic as a U sound. Thus, tut or twat, right? Thoth, as we would call it in the anglicised version of it. However, that transliterated, changing the T's to D's, you now have Dud or Dawid, right? DWD, Dawid, David, right? So Thoth and David are similar. And again, that goes back to Tutmosis III, who seems to be actually David, if their lives parallel one another quite surprisingly. Of course, as well, within the stable of David, you have as well, I mean, absolutely surprisingly, jaw-droppingly, a cartouche of Tutmosis III's name in the supposed stable of David. Very peculiar. Again, because Tutmosis III is David. Now, Tutmosis III was Akhenaten's grandfather. Solomon, again, the son of David, and also Amenhotep III. Again, their lives parallel one another quite significantly too. Amenhotep III and Solomon, and thus he produced Amenhotep IV, who later changed his name to Akhenaten, right, or effective for the Aten, right. That then links to Tutankhamun, who was probably an offspring of Akhenaten, potentially. Again, it's all very interesting, but it all link. It's the precursor. It's the origin point of the ideological origin point. Atenism is of this conspiracy at large. Yeah, absolutely. And what we're doing here is we're basically painting a picture, right? It's a tapestry. That's what we're building here. Anyone who's still listening, what we're building here is a tapestry. If you're understanding this up to now, you're beginning to see the interconnectedness of this conspiracy. It's been relentless and it's been all-encompassing. It literally is internationalist in its outlook. And it has been since, again, the late Bronze Age, the early Iron Age, which was the time of Atenism. So this is, in essence, what we're looking at here. And why am I looking at the origin point of this conspiracy? Well, if we don't understand the origin point, we're not going to understand anything else about the eschatology and where they're taking us. And I mean that sincerely. Because what they have within their eschatology, though you can understand the general theme, the overarching theme of it, if you don't understand all the nuance, you won't be able to sort of have a handle on their mentality. You won't see where they've derived from. Why are they acting like this? Why are they doing this? Well, the reason being because they derive from this origin point and they seem to be infected by this mind virus, this mind killer, this Lord of the Earth character, who in the present day is mostly referred to as Yahweh, right? So again, this is where this all derives from. There's another point on Edom. I just wish to say that in the general Abrahamic and Kabbalist tradition, again, this goes back to the birthright of Jacob and Esau and what have you. And ironically, the Abrahamic tradition is, again, stemming from the Talmud, and the Kabbalistic exegesis too is contained within there as well, that the descendants of Esau would eventually become the Romans. And to a large extent would become all Europeans. So that's another reason we're seeing everything unfolding right now within Europe, primarily. It seems to be being targeted, almost specifically. Radonites as well were also involved in the slave trade, for example. We see that in the year 1168, Helmold von Bossau reports that 700 enslaved Danes were offered for sale in Mecklenburg by Slavic pirates. Again, that was facilitated, according to Helmold von Bossau, by Radonite agents. More so as well, he states in the Black Sea area, slave trade appears to have been taken over by the Tatars, mostly selling enslaved Slavs to the Ottoman Turks. That was also facilitated, according to Helmold von Bossau, by these Radonite merchants, right? Again, the cult of Mammon. This is the cult of Mammon. This is what we're seeing here. However, in large parts of Western Europe, basically stemming from the Frankish Empire and France in general, roughly around Narbonne area, the Rhone Valley again, which is potentially where the Radonites come from as well, another potential etymology. Again, the Rhone Valley, which is where we see CERN and Davos. Now, the Rhone River runs pretty much all the way through Switzerland, or all the way to Switzerland. And if I do recall, I think it does bypass Geneva, or it goes to Lake Geneva. Yes, I think it does. Yes, it does. So it goes to Lake Geneva. So again, this is where these individuals derive from, right? Potentially, or it's where their power base was. Again, these individuals were trading as far east as with the Tang dynasty. I can, doesn't state it, but we can infer if they could travel that far east to the Tang dynasty and also to India and all of this, they surely could could have travelled, used the trade winds to travel to Cuba or North America or the Americas in general. And I'll get into that later on. That it seems that they probably did do that. I will get into that in another video. I'll also touch upon it in my book. However, yes, as we see, they're still in this area, this Rhone River Valley as well. However, another etymology could be the land of Radan, right? Radan is an area in Iraq. Now, the area did have a large Abrahamic population at the time. So, it may be that, they derive from that area, potentially, and it's near Baghdad. However, etymologically, it may, in terms of, it's a composite word, it may be Ra and Dan, right? Now, Dan is very interesting. Again, we see Poseidon, Adon, Aton, right? Again, we have the tribe of Dan as well. Very interesting. I touch upon the tribe of Dan in my book. I discuss Princess Scotia and her ties with Atonism as well. Again, very interesting. But yes, we have Ra, Dan, Ra meaning way or path, and Dan, which is one who knows. So, literally, the one who knows the way, the one who knows the path, right? Again, within Abrahamism, we have the halach, right? Which is the way, literally the way. So, again, the one who knows the way could be inferring those who are faithful to the halach. Moreover, etymologically, it may link to the Arabic yardinu, right? Or rudin. Again, we see the same thing, radin in Hebrew. Literally, it means to murmur. Again, it could be discussing the second line of the Shema. Again, where they sort of silently murmur it. Baruch Shem Kefod, Malkut Olam Vaed. That's to be quiet. It's a sort of murmur. Again, that's done twice a day. So again, something like that, a sort of cultural practice that is a daily thing, could have also provided them that name. However, as well, we see that the Kos, right, who was basically the Edomite equivalent of Yahweh. Again, his name either means bow, which again links with the shin. The shin pictographically could also mean a composite bow loaded, right, which links with Reshef and Plague and again the first horseman and all of that. Went into that in previous videos. However, Kos as well means cup in Hebrew, right? So again, this deity, this equivalent of Yahweh within the Edomian or Edomite religion, literally means cup. Now again, we see the striking parallels between Kos and Yahweh because his symbol was the eagle, the Hasmonean eagle, right? And he was also linked to the Nabatean. Again, she was also an Idumean or Edomite goddess rather, called Atergatis. Now that is basically a transliteration of Asherah, right? And all of the other, Ashtaroth, Anat, all of Katesh, Ishtar, Isis, and Anna. You can go on and on and on. Kabbalah, they all link with one another, right? So of course, Kuza literally means the archer. It appeared. It was a god that appeared in the North Arabian pantheon. However, Phos may also link with the Arabian god of the rainbow, right? Again, the rainbow is very important symbolically as a sort of fixture or a representation of unity, right? This artificial synthesis, right? Supplanting of God, if you will. Phos is described as a king, is associated with light, and defined as mighty. His works are described as ones where he adorns, avenges, blesses, chooses, gives. So like Yahweh, he's a sort of schizophrenic deity. Of course, as well, Edom, as I stated, or the Shasu, seem to worship Yahu, or Yahweh, a very, very early stage. We see within the early Egyptian records, again, like for Merneptah Stela, we see Isrir, right? From Ser. We also see a place called, again, Yahuwah, right? Or Yahuwah. These are all places in Edom. Digressing. However, this matter Kebele can also be traced to Yahweh's consort Asherah. She is also synonymous with Isis, Anat, Ketesh, where we get the term Ruach HaKodesh, also the Kabbalistic Shekinah, the divine feminine of God, the indwelling presence of the Lord, if you will. That is also derived from Ketesh, that Canaanite goddess. You can trace it back into Sumeria and Akkadia, and even the Amorite pantheon. We have Inanna and Ishtar. Furthermore, as well, there's other offshoots such as Ashtaroth, Agdatis, Athena is another term. Rhea was also called a mountain mother, right? Very peculiar. Rhea was the consort of Saturn. Saturn is very much synonymous with the sickle, if you will, and time and the cyclical motion of the universe. We see throughout, for example, in Revelation 14, where it states that another angel came out of the temple of heaven, and he too had a sharp sickle. And then it goes on, so on and so forth. It includes fire. It came from the altar and called in a loud voice, to whom had the sharp sickle, take your sharp sickle and gather the cluster of grapes. Again, the people, the clipot, which is us, right? Everyone listening to this is, unless you're involved in the inner sanctum of power, you're a clipot, you're up for sacrifice, right? And if you've took I won't go into that, this is going up to YouTube, but yes, from the earth's vine, because its grapes are ripe. Angel swung his sickle on the earth, gathered its grapes, and threw them into the great winepress of God's wrath. They were trampled in the winepress outside the city, and fantastic imagery here. And the blood flowed out of the winepress, rising as high as the horses' bridles, for a distance of 1600 stadia. Again, we see similar things within the Old Testament, again, allusions to sickles and what have you. Funnily enough, the Hyksos actually were the ones who brought the Kopesh, which is the sickle sword, to Kemet. Another link with the Hyksos and Kemet is a link with Merkaba mysticism, which Merkaba means in Semitic, the chariot. Again, it's a sort of proto-Kabbalistic doomsday cult, similar to what we've been talking about. They also brought the Merkaba, or the chariot, to Kemet, or Egypt as well, the Hyksos, when they invaded. Very peculiar, indeed, that this imagery is also something that constantly is recurring throughout all of the theology. All of these, what seemingly should be disparate theologies, but they seem totally connected. So yes, the mother goddess as well is found within the American, and again, America was set up to be the nucleus for this world totalitarian system, as per 1627 work titled The New Atlantis by Francis Bacon, and also The Secret Destiny of America by Manly P. Hall. Read that, you'll sort of figure out what America was from the beginning. Again, America links with the founders of Babylon, the Amorites, Amor, which reversed is Roma, right? Again, America, the United States of Amorica, right? Same thing. We see with Akhenaten, another name for the Hyksos was the Amar, right? Again, the Amorites, the Babylonians. Thus, we see Akhenaten and his Atenist heresy, of which Akhenaten was probably an Amar or a Hyksos himself. He founded the city of Amarna, right? Or the place of the Amar. Again, Chateau de Amaroi is the name of the Mother of Darkness castle. Very peculiar indeed. Another link is the French Revolution. The Jacobin Society, or the Jacobin Club rather, were focused entirely, or they had all of their early secret meetings, planning the destruction of the Capetian kings. That was all done within Brittany. Another name for Brittany, the Latin term for it, is Amorica, right? Same thing. Very peculiar indeed. Very peculiar. But yes, you can see, again, the Jacobins. Yakov, right? Yakov himself was the first Hyksos pharaoh. He went by the term Selitis. Now, I go into that within my new book. And again, I pretty much link Selitis with Jacob, and I show you the real story of what occurred there. However, yes, you have Columbia within the American context, this mother goddess figure. Britain has a similar deity. We have Britannia, the goddess Britannia. She is sort of like a mascot, a national mascot, if you will, much like Columbia. Within the French Revolution, we had the goddess of reason, who was dressed up, again like Columbia, in the sort of characteristic figure or form of liberty, the goddess liberty, the Latin goddess of liberty, right? The main symbol of republicanism is the pole with the Phrygian cap on top. Again, as I've stated, Sibyl or Mater Cybele goes back to Phrygia, right? Mithras is also seen wearing the Phrygian cap, right? And the Phrygian cap being on the pole also firstly links with Jacob's pillar, right? That is also seen within the first draft of the United States Great Seal, designed by William Barton. Also as well, funnily enough, we see Jacob's ladder on the reverse, and we see furthermore Columbia with the dove, right? Again, this all goes back to Sumeria, right? It goes back to, I'll touch upon that in a minute. But yes, this is the mother goddess figure that they worship. This is who you're seeing there. Again, the district of Columbia, the district of the dove. Now, this idea of the bird, again, we see it with Athena. Athena had the owl. Venus had the doves. Now, the dove or the owl goes back to the Sumerian Anzu, who was either Ishtar / Inanna, or was, and again, Ishtar and Inanna was the consort, or in some stories, the mother of Dumuzi or Tammuz, right? Again, what we're seeing there is Mother Mary and Jesus Christ, right? There's no way to get around it. It's totally paralleled, But anyway, the Anzu may be as well Erishkigal, or the Queen of the Night. Now, Anzu literally means An or Anu, which is heaven, or heavenly, and Zu, which is either bird or a bird of prey, or a dove, or an owl, right? Which is why we see again, as I stated within my Zozo video, it's why we see the Bohemian Grove with the owl. The owl is built into the city plan of Washington, D.C. It's also seen within the currency, within the $1 bill. So it's seen everywhere, right? Throughout America. Obviously, they include the dove too. So you have the District of Columbia, again, the District of the Dove, and furthermore, Columbia herself, which means the dove or dove. It also may link this Phrygian cap on the pole with the Asherah pole, right? Which we see within 2 Kings 21. Again, it discusses the Asherah pole being cleaved down. However, funnily enough, Yahweh is also depicted as a dove, curiously enough. And that's seen within the Talmud, where an exegesis on Genesis 1:2 is described as God's spirit was hovering over the waters like a dove, hovering over her young. This idea of God's spirit hovering over the water is also seen within the Dead Sea Scrolls, and also as well within the New Testament. And that's seen in Matthew 3:16, Mark 1:10, Luke 3:22, again 3:22, very interesting. John 1:32 as well. It states within Matthew 3:16, for example, when Jesus was baptized, he went, straight up out of the water, and the heavens were opened unto him, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and lighting up upon him, right? So we're seeing the same occult symbology throughout all of these religions. It's because it stems from the same root, right? It's the same conspiratorial root. And all of these religions have been invented by this same cabal for the sole purpose of, firstly, infiltrating foreign countries, and secondly, to assimilate them and assimilate their nobility into, ideologically and intellectually, into the fold, into this conspiratorial fold for, again, supplanting God, supplanting the true creator. And of course, we're very close to that as we speak. But doubling back on our discussion we had on Aten and Adonai. However, as well, Adon also links with Aten, right? It's the Kemetic Aten. When one transliterates Yaten or Aten into Semitic, the T becomes a D and the E becomes an O, right? The Hebraic pronunciation, in terms of their accent, right? Though the dialects shift across regions, most of the general dialect seems to invert both the T and the E, right? To again, D's and O's. So, like Adonai, right? Or the Kemetic would be Aten, or some of them even pronounced Aton. Supposedly, some of the old pronunciation, now again, this is reconstructed from what is a dead language, the ancient Demotic, but some of them state, some of the linguists state, that it wasn't pronounced Aten or Yaten or Aton, it was pronounced Yati, which is very similar to the Shasu's deity, again another name for the Hyksos being another name for the Canaanites, and the Israelites, what would later be the Israelites and the Kingdom of Judah. And furthermore also the Idumeans, who, as we've mentioned, link with the Radonites or the Radonites. Another etymology of Radonite, see that it may come from the Sanskrit word Raga, which is another term, Sanskrit term for the city of Re. Again, that same city in Persia we mentioned, that the Radonites were potentially linked with, or they got their name from. Again, Raga or Raga in Sanskrit means sun, moon, but it typically means red or the colour red. Again, like the red shields or the Rothschilds and the red crown of Kemet, so on and so forth. As we've mentioned, the first Abrahamic empire, the Hasmonean Empire, if we can call it an empire, the eagle, right? Again, we see that throughout the world, throughout the coats of arms, the heraldry. However, again, that goes back to Kos, right? This Idumean or Edomite equivalent of Yahweh. So there's that link there. And furthermore as well, we know the Herodians, right, or the Radonites, again linked with the Hasmoneans. We know that they all came from, or most of their kings were born in Idumea or Edom, which literally means the red land. Again, we know the Hyksos were kings of the red land, right? They held the red crown, which is Lower Egypt, which actually is Northern Egypt, sort of back to front. It follows the Nile. So, yes, so the Hyksos conquered the red land. Then when they were kicked out of Egypt, of Kemet, Postes and Amos the first, and then the second expulsion of them with Aten and Adonai, again, who was Moses. That's what we see within the Exodus story. The second expulsion of them, they ended up in Sinai, in the desert, in the Transjordan mountain range. The Shasu of Yahu, that's where that comes in. Shasu of Ser. The kingdom of Judea, when it broke off from the northern kingdom of Israel, circa 900 BC or so, the kingdom of Judah was actually centred in and around what was really a sort of carved out area of Edom and Moab, a bit of Moab as well. So it's very interesting to see that, this red land concept, this colour red, constantly crop up. But yes, Kos, that links with their god, Yahu. The Shasu, there was many tribes of them. The Shasu of Yahu, which again, Yahu may be a toponymical name, meaning a geographical name, a locational name, if you will. They hailed from the Transjordanian mountain range, right? Now, near and around Mount Seir, funnily enough. In fact, one of their names was the Isrir, right? Where we get the term Israel from, right? Isrir literally means those of Mount Seir, right, in ancient Demotic. So literally, Isrir El is the god of Mount Seir, or the god from Mount Seir. We can also further elaborate on this history from the Old Testament. Deuteronomy 33:2, Yahweh came from Mount Sinai, Yahweh came from the Sinai, and rose up onto us from Seir. He shined forth from Mount Paran. Again, there's three mountains mentioned here, right? Of course, as well, there's individuals that believe Sinai, or Mount Sinai, is actually Jabal Makula, right? Which is found in Saudi Arabia, in and around the area of Neom, where they're building Neom. Obviously, as well, we see Judges 5, verses 4-5. Yahweh, when you went out of Mount Seir, when you marched forth from the field of Edom, the earth trembled, and the heavens dropped. Yea, the clouds dropped water. The mountains quaked before the presence of Yahweh, the one of Sinai. Again, Sinai may be Jabal Makul, from before Yahweh, the God of Israel. Habakkuk 3:3, God came from Teman, which is in and around the Jordanian town of Man, right? Again, it's in this general area of firstly Edom and Mount Seir, near, again, the Sinai area, right? Neom. And the Holy One from Mount Paran, Again, Paran is pretty much in and around the city of Neom, right? Where they're building the line. It's Line City. And funnily enough as well, this makes sense because Yahweh is depicted, and I'll just finish on this, Yahweh is depicted as, a sort of pretty much a fire-breathing deity. You read Psalm 18, for example. Of course, there's throughout the Old Testament, he is referred to as a consuming fire, right? So, funnily enough, you see in the European heraldry, you will see three mountains all the time. It's very strange. All the heraldry, by the way, a lot of it derives from this area, this cult, if you will. So, yes, these areas have extinct volcanoes, right? So, again, there's that link between this idea of, flame, fire. Again, it's contained within the shin, which is the name of the Lord. 2 Kings 21:7. Even the shuklin, right? The nodding of the or the sort of thrusting of the praying Abrahamist. Again, that's to resemble a flame. Like a flame is dancing and it's sort of moving around, seeking to detach itself from the wick. In a similar idea, the Shuklin is they are seeking to detach themselves from the material world, so this is the interpretation, and thus recombine, right, with or unify, if you will, with the God, the heavenly entity, as we see in alchemy. Again, it's a similar idea, to detach oneself, to ascend beyond the physical wheel, the physical confines, beyond the Leviathan, if you will. One must purge themselves with fire, right? It's a similar idea. Again, fire links with this idea of purging oneself of the physical world, or recombining, re-envisioning the physical world into something else, something new. So again, it's a similar notion, a similar concept. So again, fire is very important throughout the Abrahamic faith. Very interesting that we see the area which it hailed from, really, was an area where there was quite a great degree of volcanic activity, in the far distant past. So again, there's that link as well that sort of clues us in, pinpointing where this Abrahamic faith derived or hailed or originated from. Now, again, it is the Transjordanian region and also northwestern Arabia, in and around what is now Neom, right? Very interesting indeed. And none of it is coincidental, of course. Again, on the Poseidon Adon connection, in that dawn part, that Dan, or even, again, as we see, the Attic variant of the Ga and Gaia, meaning earth, Attic, and I think the Ionians too, if I recall correctly, they would transpose Ga as Da. We also see that within Demeter, again, De and Mater, or Mother Earth, the mother of the earth. She was a harvest deity, very much important, integral to the Eleusinian mysteries, which was an outgrowth of Kabbalah, and this cult as well, very early on. And in essence, it's like all of the mystery religions and the secret societies had all the same rites. Again, you died and then were resurrected. Similar to this, as we see within the great work, putrefy to then purify, right? Solvi et coagula, order ab chaos. From darkness do we thence have light, or so they believe, or you destroy to thence create. Same thing over and over again. Moreover as well, we see that Adonis is essentially the proto-Christ of a Hellenic and Phrygian world, though he took the name of Attis within the Phrygian and Cappadocian regions, and also in Rome proper, when that Cabellan or Sibylline cult was obviously transported to Rome. However, another etymology of Adon within Sanskrit would be Adonavita, or, which is an adjective, having the sacred thread hanging down, right? Very peculiar. We see threads hanging down on the prayer shawls, the taliths, within the Abrahamic faith. Very interesting indeed. Moreover, even within the Norse pantheon, in the Norse mythology, we see that to attain wisdom, Odin, or Wotan, literally the Lord of Frenzy, he gave up his right eye, which in essence is like the oroboros. Again, it's relentlessness. They will do anything for wisdom, and what is wisdom? Well, in general, it's the key to escaping fate. Again, they are terrified of non-existence. They want to be like God. Again, as it appears in Genesis 3:22 to 24, it states that the fallen Adam and Eve must not be allowed to eat from the tree of life, lest they become immortal and, like us, gods. And furthermore, another meaning behind wisdom, it's merely that higher point of understanding. It's the essence of all thought. It's the primordial thought. It's the foundation point of all order within the universe. It is the foundation point of thus the cosmos and the universe itself. Thus, like the Ouroboros devouring itself, no price is too great for the eternal quest of knowledge. Moreover, as well, we see in this within Manly P. Hall's The Secret Destiny of America, he also uses that term to describe this cult, this order of the quest, right? Very interesting. However, Odin also hung upside down on the world tree on Yggdrasil. Again, very similar to this Adonavita, as we see with Yahweh, again from those 10th century graven images as I was talking about, see that he was also seen riding a horse. Now, funnily enough, Poseidon also gave birth to two horses, Pegasus and Aeon, or literally time or eternity, and Pegasus would mean that literally the spring of life, or the water of life, right? The same idea that we see present as well within the Abrahamic faith, and also the pre-Abrahamic faiths within that general area. However, how many legs do two horses have? 8. We see Wotan, he would ride Sleipnir across the sky, right? Sleipnir was an 8-legged beast. So, we're seeing that Sleipnir is essentially the same as Poseidon's offspring, this Pegasus and Aeon, merely combined, right? Literally, life and time. Very interesting indeed. Of course, we see Mugen and Thunen, two ravens of Odin, or literally thought and memory, which, like everything else, is a trinity. So, Wotan, his self, is created by memory and thought, one being metaphysical and the other being a collection of thoughts and also memories, of course, from the physical world. One is metaphysical, one is physical, and that is what creates the self, right? Or in this case, Wotan, or Odin. Very interesting. We see the same thing within the Hermetic works, too. That supposedly stems from Hemet. However, as we've saw throughout this discussion, Hemet and the Hyksos are a lot of this stems from the Hyksos, or the Hyksos period of Kemet. So you have to understand that Kabbalah is really an outgrowth of that intermingling of Kemet and the Hyksos, or the ancient Egyptians and the Hyksos. The Hyksos being the Amar, the Amorites, and later they became the Phoenicians or the Canaanites, thus the Israelites proper later on. Moreover as well, We have another etymology, Adonai, which is literally the lower regions or the lower abode, the tehom, the deep, and it can also mean hell. Now, we see Saturn, again, the sickle, it was his symbol, so was the chariot too, funnily enough. He was a deity of time as well. Yahweh is really, think about him as the creator. Then we also see Saturn was a chthonic deity, again a deity of the underworld, of Tartarus. Of course, Saturn is the 7th planet. Furthermore as well, Saturday is the Sabbath. Again, in Hebrew, Saturn is called Shabbatai, right? Beginning with the shin, letter of course. The 6th day in Hebrew literally comes to the gematria value of 666. Moreover, on this idea of the chthonic deity, Tarsu, which is literally the Hebrew equivalent of 666 numerically. Again, Tarsu sounds like Tartarus, right? Where Saturn was imprisoned, this sort of hell for the Titans. It comes to 666, or also 63 and 18, of which those two numbers as well are quite significant. Of course, 18, 1 is the monad, right? Or the echad. And 8, again, is the analemma, or the double oroboros. As above, so below. Or the eternality of life and the cosmos in general, the heavens included. So, yes, 666 is Tarsu, Tartarus, right? Again, the abyss, the king of the abyss, the abyssal pit. Abaddon, or Apollyon, the destroyer. Again, 2 Kings 21:7, the name of Yahweh is the shin, which pictographically means the destroyer or destruction. Yahweh clearly is the king of the abyss. He links with Saturn, right? And of course, his consort Asherah links with Kabbalah, and also links with Rhea, again, mothers of the mountain. Of course, this is why 7 is considered holy. The 7th planet, the outermost planet within the time of the ancients, was Saturn, right? It was always seen as the black sun. Thus, Saturn is literally the inverse of the sun, the inverse of life. Saturn can't produce life on its own. Its existence is contingent upon the sun, and it can merely, like the devil, like the adversary, like Yahweh itself, as we see within Deuteronomy 32:8-9, it can only mimic the creator, only imitate it, never be the creator. This is why they're attempting to imitate, via the 7th millennia and rectifying the world, the Tikkun Olam and all of this. Again, alchemy and the rest of Western esotericism is similar because it derives from the source. This is the reason they're attempting to follow creation, to thus destroy and reimagine creation, to supplant God, to supplant that which is in heaven, or, again, the immaterial realm. They seek to harness the power of the metaphysical to become gods within the physical world. Saturn, absolutely, and 666 totally fall in line with that. So, again, they're sacrilegiously mirroring what the Creator did in Genesis, right? As above, so below. We shall create a kingdom on earth, a malkuto, on earth, that resembles that which is in heaven. Which, in essence, what is in heaven? Well, God, the Creator, the true Creator, is all-powerful. Not by actually imposing his will in any, evil or violent way, just is because everything stems from him. To create that on earth, as you see what they're doing with 15-minute cities, they're basically ghettos. That's what they are. They're attempting to hem you in to these small, isolated areas, these slums, much like what's happened in World War II. They're attempting to ghettoise the entire nation. So your entire life will be lived in this sort of fishbowl. Moreover, as well, it's also, it facilitates, for lack of a better word, genocide. If you hem everyone in to these ghettos, into these essentially concentration camps, quote, quote, 15-minute cities, what you do is you control their travel and their movement. By doing that, the enforcers, the thugs, obviously state enforcers, state thugs, can find you easily. They can administer whatever they like to you by force. They can control your food supply, your water supply. Perhaps they do not require so many people in a certain area. And obviously the ghettos, the ghettoization, the 15-minute ghettos will absolutely allow this. It will permit the state to easily carry out all of these nefarious things. Think about this scenario if you were in these 15-minute ghettos, which are coming, if people don't stand up and quash this, is once they turn off the internet, right? Once they destroy the lines of communication that could be via a blackout or intermittent blackouts, you will be firstly isolated in these small urban pockets, these ghettos. You may be starving, they can control your food and water, of course. They can then come into these areas because there's no communication, because people can't actually go out of these areas. Hence, they can control all that occurs within that area. It becomes a controllable environment. They can purge these areas at will. All they have to do is put out the lights, put off the internet, take out the means of communication for that area. And you can bring in essentially death squads, purge squads, to purge the individuals from that area. If you require a reduction in the demographics or the population of that area. So all of this would be readily available to the state. All of these new and nefarious strategies become open then to the state. I've been rambling on a bit, I do apologise. We'll digress back to our discussion regarding the Shin and the Temple of Poseidon in Atlantis. However, this Temple of Poseidon, the Greeks and the Romans had a rather problematic issue where they would interpret foreign gods as their deities, right? And they would assign them Roman and also Greek names. So it's what's called interpretatio Graecas, right? I suspect they assigned the name Poseidon to this character, this deity that had a temple within the centre of Atlantis, is because that temple and the god who was housed within it, from the ancient Egyptian or Kemetic account from Solon, a priest of Egypt, potentially a Hyksos. Solon seems to be a Semitic derived name. However, they assigned it the name Poseidon because the deity at the centre was the Lord of the Earth. Like Enki, like all of these other Lord of the Earth characters, Aten, Adonai, Adonis, Attis, Yahweh, Yahu, Bel Shaddai, Baal Marduk, Martu, Baal, or just Bel. So all of these deities were lords of the earth. Hence they assign, and they had characteristics concurrent with one another. Hence the Greeks saw this and assigned a far more easily rememberable name, which to them was Poseidon. Moreover, it's like Sumeria and its similar deity to Yahweh of Enki, right? Again, a composite term, En, which is Lord, E, which is Earth, thus Lord of the Earth. Again, a uniter of languages, which parallels of the Tower of Babel story. He also helped Atrasis, or the Noah figure of Sumeria and Akkadia. He aided him in rebelling against Enlil, or the Lord of the Air, Lord of the Mountains as well. He aided him in building an ark to escape and survive Enlil's flood, in which he sought to depopulate the world because, according to him, the humans were making too much noise. Also, as well with Enki, he is very much a Luciferian or Promethean spirit, if you will. Also a god of secrets. As we see, another name for Nimrod was Amraphel, which literally means keeper of secrets. So again, we're seeing overlaps here. This Nimrod deity, or Amraphel, links with Enki. Enki links with Poseidon. Poseidon links with Atlantis, right? The Lord of the Earth character is found throughout the ancient world through various names. Another name for it is Yahweh, or Baal, right? Another term is Bel Shaddai, which is Lord of the Mountain. Mountains as well seem quite a concurrent theme or symbolic theme amongst these lords of the earth. Volcanoes as well, as we see with Poseidon, he was one of his epithets was earth shatterer, so earthquakes too, the sort of violence of Mother Nature. Yahweh and Baal as well, Baal Hadad, and Hadad just on its own. Marduk was another one as well. They were storm and war deities, right? So again, that theme is recurrent throughout all of these quote-quote lords of the earth. So it's interesting that it seems like it's a cult. It's like a never-ending, eternal cult to this Lord of the Earth and his goal to supplant the true Creator. He is, as the Gnostics would call him, the demiurge, right? This demiurgic figure that seeks to usurp or supplant the true Creator in totality. He already controls the earth, but he seeks to control heaven also. He seeks to create on earth that which is in heaven, right? This is what this all is about. It's rather demented actually when you lay it out. This is what they believe. This is what's in the Zohar. It really is what is within the Talmud, the Old Testament, somewhat the New Testament as well. Furthermore as well, it's in all of the Nag Hammadi. It lays it out there. Obviously it's a bit more Gnostic in its flavouring, its theological flavouring. Seen throughout the mystery religions, they all believe this. This is the same thing, order ab chaos, solve et coagula. And this conception as well is also illustrated within the oroboros. Again, the relentlessness. Doesn't matter how many times they try and fail to, break out of the dome, to jump from the canvas, right? No matter how many times they, self-implode, destroy themselves, they're relentless in this goal. They will just constantly engage in this agenda. They're relentless. Again, drifting your mind back to at the beginning of the discussion, the three classes of individuals during the 7th millennia eschatology, right? This idea of putrefaction and purification, that they have to kill off most of mankind to thence re-establish what man was destined to become, which is God. So yes, digressing back to the Klipot Noga, they are to die, in essence, just before or on the 7th millennia, to be sort of exorcised from the new existence, to be thence reincarnated. Again, this is according to the exegeses on the Zohar, to be reincarnated or resurrected, if you will, 408 years, again, which adds individually to 12. Again, the cube, the perpendicular angles on a cube. Also, it is the number of or the symbolic value of the world of creation itself. However, yes, 408 years after the 7th millennia are they to be resurrected, or 6408, the Anno Mundi. Moreover, we see with this new medical bogeyman, or the resurgence of it, Jimmy Fallon, would be 3 days ago, or it might be 2 days ago, 2 or 3 days ago at the time of recording this, he puts up a rather unfunny and cringe-inducing little sing-song regarding this this new resurgence of the medical bogeyman, the what's being called the Kraken by some experts, right? Now, very interesting gematria values on that as well. I'll get to that. However, it's approximately a minute in or so. Fallon covers his right eye, thus exposing the left eye. Remember, we went over that with the Nefertiti bust. Nefertiti being the wife of Akhenaten, the prophet of Atenism, who seems to be linked to Moshe, but I'll get into that within my book. Very interesting indeed, the history that seems to be hidden within the Bible. However, he also flashes the sign, the shin hand sign, where it's, in essence, the two middle fingers joined together, held together, with the pinky and index finger stretched out. An extremely difficult thing to do for someone who, for example, isn't a guitarist. I myself am a guitarist, so therefore it's easy enough for me to do, but you do have to practice doing that. However, he holds that hand sign for a split second, and then he points up to the sky. Very, very interesting symbology. Now, I'm going to flash on the screen right now a whole slew of individuals who did that same hand sign. Now, if anyone knows anything about the shin, and I've discussed it at length in previous videos, it's extremely, I can't stress this enough, it's extremely, extremely important within the Kabbalah, within the occult, and within this conspiracy at large that we see right now, this grand, ancient, age-old conspiracy. Now, I just wish to preface this. That value of 26 is the value of the Tetragrammaton. So the XBB, or the Tav Bet Bet in Hebrew, which equals 26, that is the value of Yahweh, right? Just like we saw with World War Z, right? The Z that was painted onto the trucks of the Russian army. Again, Z is the 26th letter. Yahweh, I get into it within the book, but Yahweh is not God, right? That's why they state Adonai Eloheinu. The Lord is God. If the Lord was God, you would merely just call him God. You would not call him the Lord. Do you see the problem here? Genesis 1, and I suspect Genesis 2 and 3 as well. However, I suspect Yahweh was inserted within Genesis 2 and 3 because it states Yahweh Elohim, which is extremely, it just does not make sense when you compare it to Genesis 1, where it just uses the term Elohim, right? Now, if you also read Deuteronomy 32:8 to 9, we see that Yahweh is actually a lesser deity to El Elyon, most likely this Elohim character, this, or who they were referring to within Genesis 1, this creator deity. El Elyon really means just the Most High God, or the higher God, right? Again, it's discussing the true creator of Genesis. After Genesis 3, everything we see is this Lord character, is this Yahweh, right? That's why you see replete throughout the Old Testament, and also the pseudepigraphical texts as well. The absolute blood, carnage, just really abhorrent things. And not really good nor bad. It's a sort of Lord character like the earth that it seems to be associated with or encompassed by. And I go into this within my book, this connection here. But it seems to be, a paradox in and of itself, schizophrenic, if you will. So I'm starting to come to this idea that the New Testament God that we see was most likely Christ as well, was most likely a different deity to this Yahweh character, right? I don't think the Old Testament and the New Testament God can be the same, are the same. Christ is, at the very least, by the crucifix alone, again, which is a net projection of the unfolded cube, again, which is the symbol of this Lord of the earth, if you will, right? Is that which ascends beyond it, right? It ascends beyond this Lord character, this Lord of the earth. Christ himself is called the Lord, right? He usurps that title, he takes that title, he takes it back off this Old Testament deity, or so it seems. Now again, I'm still looking into this, very much so, but there's something strange going on with the Old Testament, the New Testament, but just bear this in mind, this 26 of this XBB totally connects with Yahweh, as we've seen with other psychodrama events. So the name of the Lord as well, getting back to the shin, the name of the Lord, as per 2 Kings 21:7, is written or etched in Jerusalem, right? What do we see etched in Jerusalem topographically? We see the shin. It's also etched into the heart. It states somewhere else in the Old Testament. It may be in 2 Kings again, I forget now. So thus, the name of this Lord is the shin, right? The shin itself literally pictographically means victory of good over evil. It can also mean the Holy Spirit, which in the Kabbalistic sense is meant to be the Shekinah. It can also be a sort of feminine aspect of God, or in this case, the Lord. Pictographically, its teeth for fire can also be a bow, which links with toxo, right? The Greek word for bow, where we get our word toxon from, or toxic. Again, a toxicon was a poison arrow. That links with Reshef. Reshef is, one could say, Reshef is a Canaanite god of plagues. He was, if you look at the oldest Canaanite structures, we see the temple of the obelisks, right? And this is also found, a temple of the obelisks is also found within Egypt as well. It's called Het Ben Ben. Again, the house of the obelisk, or the house of the capstone, right? An obelisk itself is merely a Ben Ben stone, which in a sense is a capstone for a pyramid. So that's where that sort of symbolism all derives from, the capstone that we see in masonry and what have you. However, the first horseman links with this Reshef character. It's the reason the first horseman is linked with pestilence, him carrying a bow. A bow has always been the symbol of Reshef, it's been the symbol of pestilence. The shin itself, pictographically, in some traditions is also stated or remarked to be a composite bow with an arrow loaded within it, right? Of course, what are they using to administer the redemption serum? However, in the sort of modern Lurianic Kabbalistic sense, it means fire or to devour, right? As you see here, the fire of God or the Lord. Again, you hear El, Adonai Eloheinu. Remember, the Lord is God, right? So, thus the fire of the Lord, consume all his enemies, devour, destroy, right? Something sharp, pierce the veil, right? To pierce the concealed world. Again, that's a Kabbalistic term. It's the higher point, right? Where God is. That's what they seek to do, to pierce the veil. Through chaos, through destruction, and through destroying the creation of God. Thus, build back better, right? It's the same sort of ideas that we see recurring through this secret society and its various sects and offshoots. However, yes, when he puts up that sign, Jimmy Fallon is, in essence, putting onto you a hex of fire or a hex of destruction, if you will, a sort of a plague. a divine fire, a destruction, plague, right, upon you. It's also to signal their loyalty and to signal who's orchestrating this all. And with obviously the left eye symbolism, it's all the more stronger, the case for this. Now, this has been done by this sign, this shin sign, has been done by, a myriad of individuals. People in or personas or individuals, figures, historical and contemporary, who people believe are, good guys. They're anything but. They're all part of this cult, right? Everything you see, all of the events through history have been carefully contrived, staged. It's all meant to hit a certain ritualistic rhythm, right? It's all part of a theurgy, of a magical ritual. They seem to be rather superstitious. They do. They seem to be following a prophecy, a promise, as George Bush Sr. stated. The promise envisioned by the UN's founders, right? It's a promise, it's a prophecy. Basically, the promise is boundless, perpetual power to rival God. Basically, to have a world of their own. Oh yes, digressing. I forgot to mention that the third class is the Clipot Hatmiot, right? This is what Fallon's doing here to the majority. In essence, the Clipot Hatmiot are the unclean ones. The shells or husks of the unclean ones, the irredeemable. They must be brought to destruction by their own hands, right? Hence why we have the redemption serum. People going there willingly, lining up in queues, waiting willingly for their turn, right? It's all part of the theurgy. You must burn yourself. You must immolate yourself in this fire, willingly, right? You must go on the brazen altar as a willing sacrifice for the Haolam Haba, the world to come, right? That's what this is all about. It's when you really start seeing the overarching symbolism and the etymology. Again, linguistics ties all this in as well, as symbolism is a form of linguistics, really. Symbology is a language, symbolism is a language. Once you start to get on the same wavelength as them, in seeing and identifying their symbology, and understanding the overarching, general theme of their eschatology, of their end times, of the prophecy, of the promise that they're hoping to bring about, you take off. It opens up a whole new dimension of viewing not just history and the events thereof, but of the contemporary world. And of course, everything we're seeing right now, and have been seeing since the turn of this decade. So just as a final note on that, we see in Hebrew, Kraken, literally the phonetic equivalent within the Hebrew, it comes to 73. Again, 7 lower Sephiroth and the 3 higher. Or, again, the full 10, which is God. It's the true God, that is. We also see Kraken within English as 102. Again, we saw 102 within previous medical bogeyman event, right? Now, 102, again, zeros don't really factor into gematria because 0 itself as a concept, as a valueless number, did not come into existence until relatively recently within the entire arc of human history. So therefore, and obviously the history of this conspiracy, so therefore it's merely 12 and 21. 21 is the letter shin, right? The 21st letter of the Hebrew alphabet is the shin, right? That's the reason for 102. Obviously 12 as well, the reverse of 21, is the cube. It's the perpendicular angles of the cube. It's the prism. And what does the Internet of Things seek to do? Or the Internet of all things, which by the way links with Atonism, because Aten was called himself Lord of all things. Again, Aten is, if you transliterate Aten into the Semitic form, the T becomes a D, and E takes on an O. Though in the Kemetic as well, it was sometimes spelt with an O, as in Aton. So it literally becomes Adon. What do we call the Lord? Adonai. It's the same deity. It's Aten, right? So again as well, 12 links with Jacob's ladder, the 12 lower levels, which at each side is cherubim. So again, 12 times 2 is 24. 24 or 42 is also quite important eschatologically. We see it within Revelation, the 42 months. Furthermore as well, we see it within the Merkaba mysticism. Of course as well, that links with the eschatological view of the Masse Merkaba, which is a rather integral text of Merkaba mysticism, again translated by Gershom Scholem. It's considered a prime literary piece of the Hechalot, which translates as palaces. It refers to a heavenly ascent. Furthermore as well, I'll get into it within other videos and my book in general, but within the Zohar, they also discuss at the time of the Mashiach, they will build a tower to reach up into the firmament, to reach up into heaven. Again, it's the same idea like CERN, the horn or the tube or the toroid. Again, like the tower. Think of the tower as a thread, hanging thread between the profane and the divine, joining them together. So, yes, in the Zohar it discusses that as well. Again, this is all linked. These individuals are, in essence, are tower builders. Of course, they're already building other types of modern towers today that involve psychotronic technology. But in general, they are tower builders. They are the tower builders, absolutely. And furthermore as well, because of this mystery religion that they're involved within, right? We see that within Genesis 11, it discusses a king of Shinar or Sumer titled Amraphel, which literally means the keeper of the secrets, right? Again, this idea of the mystery religions and what have you. But that is another name for Nimrod as well. Nimrod too was a king of Shinar. Of course, then that links to the Tower of Babel story. The Tower of Babel story as well, we find within the, funnily enough, the Aztec or Nahuatl Duran Codex, right, from the 16th century. One of the stories, one of the myths, was literally a Tower of Babel story. Very peculiar. So this story is probably speaking to a true event, merely spoken of in metaphor. So yes, Gershom Scholem translated this Maase Merkaba, or did the first edit anyway. Now, Gershom Scholem is extremely important within modern understanding of Kabbalah, and he really is a pioneer of linking the technological with the Kabbalistic, right? That which we see now taking place within Harari's work, seen within Homo Deus, 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. Obviously as well, Davos is all linked with this as well. However, he discusses the same thing within his work, rather famous piece of work, Messianic Ideas in Judaism, where he literally states within that work that once the spirit of uncleanliness, again the Klipot, Hatmiot, and the Klipot in general, are vanquished from this world. Again, this comes via chaos, putrefaction, and everything we see now. Them putting up the prices, them starving people, spreading pestilence by the craft, should we say. However, yes, all of these various ways are designed to inflict, in essence, a sort of cleaning up of the world, right? This is entirely what the shin embodies within the pictographic meaning of that letter. To immolate, or, set alight via fire the enemies of the Lord of the earth. The overall general premise is to descend, then reascend, right? It's hymns for the descenders, right? Again, this is why they debase themselves with everything they do, with everything that they have wrought upon society. That is what it is designed to do, this sort of Kabbalistic or occult eschatology. It's designed to descend the world into the abyss, then destroy it, from that reascend. Again, as I have spoken of slightly in the past, I touched upon it in my work, the Qatar World Cup. I would watch that. And also within my C22 video. America, again, an interesting name in and of itself, but we see within the first draft by William Barton, the designer of the Great Seal of the United States of America, his first draft was extremely, the obverse and the reverse. Again, the reverse clearly is Jacob's ladder. It was sort of hidden or obfuscated with the use of the pyramid, but that's what it really is. It's Jacob's ladder, right? Again, ascending to heaven. It's becoming God. Right? This is how they think of these hymns or stories or parables, right? It doesn't matter how you interpret them. This is how they interpret them, right? So yes, furthermore on the obverse, we see, well, firstly, we see this mother goddess and the Lord of the earth, dualism there. In the middle, now again, the red and the white as well is extremely, it all goes back to Kemet or ancient Egypt. Again, I've discussed it at length, that this idea of the red and the white crowns, merging them together. Again, symbolic of merging the dualism into a sort of perverted new synthesis, a unity. That's what the symbolism of the rainbow encompasses. In fact, as you see on the black pillar, right, again, putrefaction, that is the colour of putrefaction, which is black. Again, we have the idea of America, which is a melting pot. Again, that term is very new, right? What does an alchemist do in a melting pot? Brings all the ingredients, renders the diverse array of ingredients down to a uniform carbo, right? A uniform blackness. Now, that's exactly what they seek to do with America, as we see within the Great Seal here, this first draft here, right? We have the black pillar. The pillar as well is actually where the term Zion derives from. And it's also a symbol of Zion. If we look at the Kemetic or ancient Egyptian, very famous capital, or one of the most famous capitals, Heliopolis, again the religious centre as well. The native Kemetic name of that city was Yunu or Yanu. Again, very close to Yahweh, funnily enough. However, contextually, it means pillar. However, it really means like a holy place. The Hebrew term for it, on, derives from the Sumerian Anu, which is, it means heaven, of course. Of course, we understand the Anunnaki, and the Sumerian civilization, the Sumerian and Akkadian theology is very similar to what we find within the Abrahamic religion. Extremely. Of course, the main ones, the main stories being the deluge myth. We see Tower of Babel story, Enki. Again, the Lord of the Earth is the uniter of languages. However, the primary link is after the old Babylonian period, where we find Anu, Enlil, and Enki. That sort of that triadic head of the pantheon, the Sumerian and Akkadian pantheon. What we find is they all became synthesized into this character called Marduk, or Martu, again where the term Amar or Amarutu or Amorite comes from, right? Again, I've spoken of the Amorites. As you can see with the infographic I'm putting on the screen now, all of the names of quite important turning points or areas, locations for this cult seem to all contain this Amar or Amer or Amor. Again, this is alluding to the Amorites, or the founders of Babylon, and also other cities such as Lagash. However, of Marduk it's stated, and again this links with Yahweh, quote, the festival, this is Aki 2. Well, actually, before I state this, I wish to go over this concept of Anno Demostheni in 322. So, yes, Skull and Bones, Anno Demostheni, the calendar system of Skull and Bones and many other Western esoteric societies, takes its year 0 from 322 BC, the death of Demosthenes, his name meaning strength of the people, or vigour or power of the people, and the point where Athens became a despotism. Moreover, by the way, you have 137 degrees, which is the golden section, or it's linked mathematically to the golden ratio. It derives from the golden ratio. Of course, if you deduct 137 from a full circle, 360 degrees, you get 223 degrees, or 223 degrees. Again, that's 322 reversed. Very interesting indeed. However, on this Anno Demostheni, using this calendar system, 1980 AD, the opening of the Georgia Guidestones was actually the year 2302 Anno Demostheni, or again 322, jumbled up. We also see that 322, or March 22nd, was the Babylonian New Year, or the Aki 2 festival, and is still marked as the first sign on the zodiac, which is Babylonian in origin. This is the point where the barley was harvested, and the mirror of this, September 22nd, is typically the sowing season of barley, or of the barley, pardon. Moreover, by the way, this Aki 2 festival occurred in what the Amorites, or pardon me, the Sumerians and Akkadians called Nishanu, the month of Nishanu. We still have that month within the Hebrew culture, and it's called Nishan. It's slightly abbreviated from the Sumerian, but it's still the same word, really. So this Aki 2 festival was a time of great religious festivity and a season of harvest. So this time period, this harvesting of the barley, around about March 22nd, was a time of great religious festivity and a season of sacrifice, a season of the harvest. Recall what happened 11 days prior to these two dates, September 22nd and March 22nd, in 2001 and 2020 respectively. So this is the link between Yahweh, the Lord, and Marduk. Quote, the festival, better conglomerate of festivities, was celebrated on two locations, in Babylon, in the temple of the supreme god Marduk, the Esaglia, or literally the house that rises its head like a pillar, and the house of the New Year, which was situated north of the city. The two gods who were in the centre of the festival were Nabu, a sort of Christ figure, and his father, the supreme god Marduk, who was in the first millennium BCE, usually called Bel, or Baal, which literally means Lord, because his real name was considered too holy to be pronounced. Just like Yahweh being called Adonai, or Lord, as his name likewise was too holy to be pronounced, it was considered. Marduk is literally just the Lord character in one of its many origins, which is like Saturn and all those other deities, the Lord of the harvest of souls. Moreover, circa 1000 BC, Marduk prior to this date, this approximate year. He was actually a lesser deity. He was barely known, actually. We typically find the supreme deity was Enlil, again, lord of the air, or Enki. Anu as well was extremely important, of course. However, Marduk was a lesser deity. And then it seems, again, as it's seen within Deuteronomy 32, 8-9, it seems El Elyon, or Elohim, was superseded by Yahweh, the Lord, one of the sons of El. So it's very interesting. We see a similar thing within the Ugaritic text of the Baal epic. Again, Baal supplants, or deposes, rather, El. So it's quite interesting. We see a similar thing here with this Marduk character, this Baal, this Lord, who was called Lord, who was called Baal, or Baal, because his real name was considered too holy to be pronounced. Again, it's entirely like the Abrahamic faith. It's no coincidence, of course. They clearly derive from the Amorites. And again, we can link the Hyksos with the Israelites, or another name for the Hyksos would be the Amar, hence the Amorites or the Babylonians, named after that Lord character, that Marduk or Amarutu or Martu, and naturally the Hyksos or Amar were linked with Akhenaten and Atenism. So it all links, it's all one giant web. This is the origin point of this conspiracy. Moreover, Georgia also derives from a Greek word of the same pronunciation, meaning farm work or agriculture, or in an archaic sense, it can mean harvest, and a contextual sense as well. Hence, Georgia guidestones seems to mean guidestones to the harvest. They may have been demolished due to the guide to the harvest no longer being needed due to the ongoing nature of it now. Notice the temple in Solomon's temple was built on the highest hill of Jerusalem, which Marduk and his great ziggurat was akin to this. Right next to the threshing floor, of course, for the grains once harvested, thence be threshed. In fact, the Dome of the Rock, well, the rock there is actually the ancient threshing floor. The high mountain or hills are those places that the ancients seemed to think were closer to the gods or the sky. The Anu, if you will, right? The Zianu, the Zion, right? Hence why they potentially seem to combine the harvest and mountain deity into one form, a lord. Of course, Yahweh is said to emanate or derive rather from Mount Seir. He came out of Mount Seir. And they make it the supreme being, this harvest and mountain deity, like Saturn or Yahweh, or even Marduk, who took on that epithet Bel Shaddai within the western Amaru kingdom, just north of Phoenicia. Again, that later changed into the Hebrew El Shaddai. Bel Shaddai literally means he who dwells in or on the mountain, right? Again, as we understand about Yahweh, he came out of Mount Seir, right? Of course, as well, Moses went up to Mount Sinai to meet Yahweh, who was dwelling in the darkness. And Yahweh gifted him the 2 tablets, again with the 10 commandments. It was all linked. In fact, Yahweh is Marduk. Yahweh is this Lord character. In fact, Marduk seems to be, or who went by Baal as well, or Baal, again, just the Lord. This Lord character is constant throughout history. And this idea of the harvest is something we actually see, firstly, throughout Revelation. They talk about taking sickles, harvest the grapes, put them in the wine press, sacrifice and harvesting of souls that have been unkempt, for so long. There's also allusions to that within the Old Testament as well. This idea of harvesting and seeing individuals, the majority of the population, seeing them as nothing more than just crops to be harvested when ripe. That theme is absolutely replete throughout the Abrahamic religion. We even see it crop up within John Dee and Edward Kelly's work. So in their angelic discussions, it states, quote, "When the farmer was to harvest the barley, he was not to wait, but was to harvest just at the right moment. This was when the barley stood tall and did not bend over under its own weight." Perhaps they're alluding to spiritual purity here. 3 men were to do the harvesting as a team, using a reaper and a binder, like Dee and Kelly were instructed to do so. We even have this idea in Revelation 16:13. It states, "And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon," potentially the city of London, if we see its coat of arms, "and out of the mouth of the beast," which potentially may be Washington, D.C. in this context, "and out of the mouth of the false prophet, Rome or Caput Mundi." And Washington, D.C. probably is the beast. As we see with the mark of the beast, it's to do with commerce. It's to do with buying and selling. Of course, we see the technology of the CBDC system, and again, it will all be linked and backed. A US digital coin or US digital credit or dollar. So again, that most likely seems to connect with the beast. And of course, the prophet, the Caput Mundi, again, Vatican itself derives from a root meaning soothsayer or prophet. Actually, it's a composite of 2 words, vatis and canur, which literally combined means singing prophet or singing soothsayer. Very interesting indeed. Of course, in Revelation 14, beginning at verse 14, it states, "I looked, and there before me was a white cloud, and seated on the cloud was one like a son of man, with a crown of gold on his head, and a sharp sickle in his hand." Again, that links with the Hyksos. The sickle sword, just like the chariot, the Merkaba, the sickle sword, the Chopesh, was brought into Egypt by the Hyksos, by the Amar. Right? So that wasn't an Egyptian weapon. Then another angel came out of the temple and called in a loud voice to him who was sitting on the cloud, "Take your sickle and reap, because the time to reap has come." And there's that allusion again to the time of the harvest, the time to reap has come. "For the harvest of the earth is ripe." Again, this is why 3/11/2020, 11 days prior, again, in the Babylonian tradition, I can imagine it's similar in the Sumerian and Akkadian tradition, though I can't say for certain. There was typically between 11 and 13 days of preparation for a festival, especially, a New Year's festival like the Aki 2. Again, that took place on 3/22. So 11 days prior to that was, again, yes, that was the official sounding of that event which occurred, of that torturous event that we all had to endure. "For the harvest of the earth is ripe." So he was seated on the cloud, swung his sickle over the earth, and the earth was harvested. Now it goes on to say, take your sharp sickle and gather the clusters of grapes or humans from the earth's vine, the nations, because its grapes are ripe. And the angel swung his sickle on the earth and gathered the grapes and threw them into the great winepress of God or Yahweh or Marduk's wrath. They were trampled into the winepress outside the city, and blood flowed out of the press, rising as high as the horses' bridles for a distance of 1,600 stadia. Now, again, psychopathic imagery. But it's this same illusion of the harvest, right? This is what we're seeing. This is all connected. Christianity, the Abrahamic religion, is a mystery religion, just like the rest of them. They're all interconnected. They're all intermeshed. You can't divide them or split them apart. They're not independent religions. They function as one conspiratorial agglomerate. With the second part of the composite word Zion, noting Heliopolis, and furthermore linking with the Kemetic name for Heliopolis, the native Kemetic word for it, which was Yanu, right? Again links with the Sumerian or Akkadian Anu. But this term, this On, which is the Semitic rendering of this word, it also, in the Ugaritic, means power or strength. Funnily enough, it can also mean sexual potency. Again, hence the obelisk or the pillar itself. However, Zion derives from composite of words. Sia, which means barren place or the desert, or the Deshret, the red land, and On, again, that name for Yanu or Heliopolis. So thus, literally pillar or holy place. So again, as we see with Jacob's pillow stone, or the stone of destiny, which later was a foundation stone for a pillar that was raised by Jacob. Again, another allusion to this pillar concept. Digressing back to our discussion regarding the pillar, the black pillar, and the first draft of the Great Seal of the US as designed by William Barton. And at the top is the fire, and from the fire is the phoenix, right, rising from the ashes. Again, the fire is the shin letter, right? Another name, strangely enough, for Yanu or Heliopolis, again, the city of the pillar or the pillar, was Erha-Heres, which literally means city of destruction. Now, again, city of the shin or shin letter. We also have Jerusalem, right? Or Yerushalim. Now, either could mean city of peace, Yerushalom, or it could also mean Yerushalim, which is city of the evening star or the moon. However, if we assume that it is Yerushalom, Shalom pictographically means, collectively, all of its various letters, pictographically means he who destroys the agent of chaos. Again, as we've discussed prior, this idea of world peace, as is typified by the disarmament sculpture outside the UN building, it's about controlling arms, it's about controlling the use of force, and it's about having an oligopoly upon the use of force, and upon violence, upon war, and the exercise of all of that. So I just wish to discuss as well another link with the shin letter or the name of the Lord, right? This symbol of the tikkun, of the rectification of the great work, to devour or destroy or to mass immolate, to set alight the entire world. Again, I don't want to set the world on fire. So it's in the shape of a W, right? That's the Phoenician equivalent of the shin. This W letter. The Greek equivalent is the psi letter, right? Trident. It looks like a trident. The shin or psi is the shape of Dealey Plaza, right? That's the shape Dealey Plaza was in, again where JFK was shot. Moreover, we have Poseidon, or literally from the Greek, Lord or Master of the Earth, right? He's similar to Enki in the Sumerian pantheon, who was Lord of the Earth and associated with water as well, again like the Lord of the Bible. His name Poseidon actually seems to contain as well the Adon, right, the Lord. Poseidon. Again, Aten, Adon, Adonai. That motif is concurrent here as well. However, supposedly at the centre of Atlantis it is stated that there was a temple of Poseidon, right? Again, Poseidon carries that shin-shaped trident, and, of course, we have the allusions to Atlantis in the 1627 New Atlantis of Francis Bacon. Again, that program that set into motion the colonization of the United States of America, right? Again, this conspiracy goes back to the Amorites, Chateau de Amaroi, or the Castle of the Amaroi, the Castle of the Amer, right? Again, the Amorites. You have the ancient and mystical order, Rosicrucis, or the full name, or the Rosicrucian order. That itself is, its acronym is Amorc. Again, you see the Amor again. Moreover, within one of the major HQs or headquarters of the Rosicrucian order in Brazil, we see an Egyptian temple, of course, but it has right at the front, emblazoned on this building, is a huge symbol of the Aten, right? The disc with the 14 rays emanating from it, with hands at the end. Again, you see people put up their hands to heaven when they feel this quote-quote spirit enter them within these religious settings. Again, religion has been totally co-opted by these people, right? All of the truths within it have been distorted, so you really have to, take a good look at the New Testament and all the apocryphal works with a fresh set of eyes. So thus we see the connection with this idea of Atlantis. Moreover, Roma backwards is Amor. You have the United States of America, right? Or Amorica, right? The United States of America, as found in myth, is very much concurrent with Brittany, or the old name for it, Amorica, right? It's the same idea. Moreover, in Amorica was where the Jacobin, right, Jacob, or as his title was, Seletus, as attested to by Manetho. However, he was the first Hyksos pharaoh of Upper Egypt, or pardon me, Lower Egypt, that which is in the north, the northern kingdom, the Red Land, the Deshret. Hence another connection to the real meaning of Zion, the holy place of the Deshret, or Red Land. Digressing, the Jacobin society was first set up, again, in Amorica, in Brittany, right? In fact, it was exclusively held, all of the secret meetings in the beginning were exclusively held in Brittany. I mean, these are the architects of the French Revolution going forward, and I mean, that was replete with this same sort of symbology that we saw and still continue to see today within the product of the American Revolution, which is the United States of America, of whose name, again like the rest, links with the Amorites, who were named after the Lord, the Baal or Bel, that they worshipped, Martu or Marduk, of whose Akkadian native name was Amarutu, again son of or bull calf of the sun. Again, this idea of son of the sun. Another name, by the way, for Yaakov or Seletus was Sekenre Yakabim or Sekenre Yakmo. Sekenre literally means son of Ra. Ra is literally the Kemetic word for sun. It's where we get our term Ray from. Thus, it literally, Sekenre is son of the sun. It's the same idea. In fact, we see the same thing with Akhenaten. He was referred to as the son of the sun as well, or the son of Aten. Again, it was from its founding, America that is, designed to be like all of these other nations that were conquered by them as well, through subterfuge and clandestine operations. It was designed to be the nucleus of a totalitarian world state, which inevitably will turn into a world monarchy, of whom the monarch will descend or derive from, the quote-quote line, the special line that has been hidden from us and will soon be unveiled to the public. They're already coming out more and more blatantly or the public who remain rather. They're already coming out more and more blatantly with their symbolism, and they're getting very brazen indeed. So of course as well, the Atlantis city plan, or the described city plan, as stated within the Timaeus and Critias of Plato, is literally the Simsum, right? Illustration or concept that exists within the Kabbalah. This idea or this concept of the beginning of creation, according to them, right? Where the Ein Sof, or the light of the divine, entered through the vacuum and emanated its, 10 aspects. And it's illustrated in a concentric circle-like manner. So Enki himself was very much a Luciferian or Promethean character, and acts as such within the Sumerian deluge myth. He was the uniter of languages, and in some accounts the creator of man from clay, or the red earth. Again, very much akin to Adam or Adama, which means son of the red earth, right? Adam itself actually means red. Edom and Adam, the pronunciation of that, the spelling, it's spelt with an aleph, right? The diacritics, or the modern markings upon the letters to indicate or to intimate the pronunciation of the Hebrew letter in context with the word, wasn't existent within ancient Hebrew. So again, a lot of the words really overlapped, and the pronunciation of it had to be inferred from the context of the sentence. However, yes, Adama means son of the red earth, again, son of the clay. The Sumerians themselves were not native to the region, right? Just remember that. They migrated there and then assumed control of the native population through some sort of means, probably clandestine, or by means of subterfuge, as we see the potential, as we see similarly the potential descendants of them doing so here as well. So again, the Shin letter is that motif that shows this to be a grand conspiracy of the ages, something that seemingly goes further back than any of us can most probably imagine. Of course, as well, the Semitic word, or the Hebrew word for Sumer, is Shinar. Shinar is actually written Shinar, so literally Shinar. Or again, the Shin, the land of the Shin, right? We also see Abraham and his father, most probably the deity they worshipped since they moved from Ur, whose patron deity was the moon god Shin, again another moon deity, just like Yah within the Kemetic world that developed into Yahu, then Yahweh. They went north into Haran, whose patron deity again was Shin, the moon god. And this lord of the earth figure seems incessantly recurring, taking on many names and epithets, but his rites, behaviour, eschatology, and symbols remain unchanged.